Malacanang says ABS-CBN is free to exhaust all available legal remedies against his cease and desist order from the National Telecommunications Commission. It adds the network's continued operation is entirely the decision of NTC. Let's now hear from Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo, who joins us this morning. Good morning, Secretary Panelo, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Christian.
Okay, first we know that the President had repeatedly attacked ABS-CBN, criticizing it often along with two other news organizations. And on more than one occasion, he threatened to shut down ABS-CBN, the corporation. Now, this already happened yesterday. Is this what the President wanted and he got it?
Again, we will have to repeat what I have said, what the President has said repeatedly about this particular case. The President has nothing to do with this. With respect to the matter you said about him saying something against the President, we said then that that was in relation to one incident that we have already previously and extensively discussed. Now, with respect to the closure, the President has nothing to do with the decision of the NTC. You must remember that repeatedly also, I have already explained that it is Congress which has the authority to grant or to renew the franchise of ABS-CBN. But also I've been saying all along that you are barking at the wrong tree, because it's not the President, because there is a law that will have to be followed. And Congress hasn't done anything about it. That has been pending in that body for 6 years. So the President has nothing to do with it.
Okay, when you say that the President had nothing to do with this, of course, legally, technically, it's in the hands of Congress and they did not act. But how do you separate the President from the issue, given the continuous tirades that he had been issuing or unleashing against the network?
You must remember that the President has already apologized and has forgiven ABS.
Because you said that this has nothing to do with what the President wants. But again, in the past, he had been telling the public that he wanted ABS-CBN to be shut down. And he threatened to block the franchise renewal. So how can you
I already explained that in the program of Karen at the time. I said, the title of the President, but with respect to the violations that the President had done to him when he paid for an advertisement that was not aired. That was it. And when the executives of ABS-CBN, the present ones, apologized to him, then he accepted the apology. And we heard him say that.
So you're saying that that issue was already settled as far as the President was concerned?
Definitely.
So what do you think is happening here?
Well, there is a law, Christian. The problem is we are not focusing on what the law says. The law says that if a franchise is expired, then you have to get a franchise.
I'm asking these questions because we know for a fact how the political system here in the Philippines works. Any sitting president is so powerful under the presidential system that he controls Congress, both chambers, more specifically the House of Representatives. And we know that he's very close to the House Speaker, Alan Peter Cayetano. So it's but fair to ask these questions given the realities that we know for a fact. You know this also.
You should also know the fact that this is a different kind of president where he does not interfere on the work on any of, not only of his departments in the executive branch, but with Congress. You must remember that his appointees in the cabinet, when it was not approved by Congress, we didn't hear any complaint. How many appointments of Congress which have not been approved by the Commissioner of Appointments?
But you also, that's a common response that we hear from you, that the President does not interfere with the affairs of the...
That is a common response because that is the truth. That is a fact. That is a reality. If you say that he's very powerful, how come the appointments of the members of the cabinet which are appointed has not been approved? by Congress.
so if
Can
the
he
president
do
is
anything about it?
okay, so if the president respects the processes, the procedures in the House of Representatives, don't you think he should not have issued statements, let's say against, in this case, ABS-CBN, knowing that the process is with the Congress, but he said on many occasions that he would block the franchise renewal. So how then do you disengage him from that issue?
That was before, but when he accepted the apology, I think that settled the personal score. And so far as the personal sentiment of the president is concerned. So if you're still waiting, as far as you're concerned, what the president wanted, then he has already expressed if that is what you want.
So assuming that Congress, once and for all, finally acts on this application for franchise renewal, and it gets on the desk of the president, he will sign it, he will not block it?
The president always do what the Constitution tells him to do. He approves laws that is in accord with the Constitution. We have seen that. He vetoes provisions with respect to anything that is contrary to the Constitution. And he did that several times.
But
So I
here-
don't think there is any problem with the president. If
So-
the franchise is correctly done, it is in accord with the Constitution, then I don't think the president will veto it.
Did you or the president, as far as you know, have prior information that the NTC was going to issue the shutdown order, or you just learned about this when this was actually issued?
You know, the president's style is he does not interfere. And as I, on many occasions, revealed what he says during cabinet meetings, when there is a thorny issue, any problem that is confronted or is being raised to him, his response is always, let the law take its course. What the law says, then let us enforce it. It's as simple as that. He's a lawyer and he knows the limitations of the presidency.
Okay, he's a lawyer, but he's also a leader, he's also a politician, he's also the president. Now let's talk about the big picture here. Is he even concerned that the largest media network in the Philippines was closed down under his watch, under his term?
Under his watch, but not his fault, Christian. You should always remember that. It was not his fault. It was not his omission. And so you cannot put the blame on him. Now, ABS-CBN knew from the very start that its franchise would be expiring. Then it should have done its part in asking Congress to do its job. Did it do it? If it did, but Congress has not done its task, then why can you be blaming the president for that?
Again, we know that there are many different factors at play here. There are different political forces at play. But if you look at this from the bigger perspective, let's say, if you're going to go by how history might judge this episode, which is happening or unfolding now, the last time that ABS-CBN, the corporation, was shut down was in 1972 under the Marcos dictatorship. And now it happened again under President Duterte. So aren't you even concerned that history might not judge you?
I don't think there is a repetition of history. When martial law was declared, then the president then had the power to close all communications and telecommunications. This particular chapter of history, the president does not have that power. Congress has that power. There is a whale of a difference between then and now, Christian.
But isn't that even worse now, because it didn't have to send soldiers or troops to close down a news network, but because law supposedly is being misused to go after a network, and it found it found its mark.
Christian, I think the facts are very clear. There is a franchise and it expired. Congress did not grant the franchise when the very fact is there is a pending application for that or petition for a renewal. Now, there is a law which says you cannot operate. There is a Supreme Court decision that says a provisional authority is invalid. In other words, we're just following the law.
That's quite interesting because everyone wants to follow the law. But here, you see how things unfolded. The application had been there for so long, even before 2016. So under this present Congress and the previous Congress, before the 18th Congress, the congressman didn't act. So there's a perception that actually, at least the congressman dribbled this, waited until it expired. And now, they're blaming the NTC for not issuing a provisional authority.
Okay, first, the perception is more apparent than real. Number two, NTC that does not have that power, as I have said earlier, because the Supreme Court said so. The NTC as an institution cannot issue that. It cannot override the power of Congress to grant a franchise. So I'm even, I'm also amused, Christian, why you cannot even touch on Congress and blame it for not doing its job. You keep on harping back on the president when it is very clear that the president does not have the power.
No, I'd just like to make this clear, Secretary Panelo. Again, I explained the political dynamics in the Philippines. Of course, we know that the ball is in the hands of Congress, and they are very much to blame for sitting on this issue, on this
Finally, you said it.
But again,
for the first time. I said, finally, you said it, that it's Congress who's to blame for it.
No, that is pretty apparent to a lot of people who have been observing
not only
what has
apparent,
been
that's
happening.
real.
Okay.
It's
But
real.
again, my point is that it's very difficult to disengage the president from the issue, given the pronouncements that he had made. But again,
It's
according to
only
you,
difficult,
the issue
Christian,
had
if
been
you're
settled.
biased against him. It's
Okay.
only difficult if you're biased against him.
No, these are questions that we need to ask, apparently.
But those questions have been answered.
There is another issue, for example, because you keep complaining about the issue of the president being linked to what happened. You also had the Solicitor General, the top lawyer of the government, calling for the revocation of the existing franchise of ABS-CBN. So again,
But Christian, but that is the job of the Solicitor General. If he has not done that, then he will be facing dereliction of duty.
so again, you cannot avoid people from thinking that the president might be linked here, because the Solicitor General made that action.
But as we said repeatedly, from the first day of the president, he has already given his style of governing. He told all members of the cabinet, I will let you do your job. I will not interfere. The only time I will intrude into your domain and when there is corruption, when there is a great abuse of power, that is the only time I will.
Okay,
And that's what he has been doing ever since.
Okay, I'd like to get your legal opinion on this. Since ABS-CBN was shut down already yesterday, what do you think happens to the petition, to the quo warranto petition filed by the Solicitor General before the Supreme Court? Is that rendered moot and academic?
I don't know about that. I'd rather let the Solicitor General respond to your query.
Yeah, but as a matter of academic discussion, when such things happen, what happens to the petition? Because the thing that he wanted to happen had already happened.
That's for the Supreme Court to decide, Christian.
What do you teach in law schools, for example?
Come again?
What do they teach in law schools regarding things like this?
I do not know what you mean by that.
I mean,
We have a Supreme Court. There is a pending case, and it's the Supreme Court that will decide, one way or the other.
do you think the legal issues raised by the Solicitor General should also be settled to provide guidance in the future for other networks that might be similarly situated?
Then let us wait for the Supreme Court to decide, one way or the other. And whatever the Supreme Court says, we have to obey.
Okay, Secretary Panelo, thank you very much for joining us this morning.